In this episode of the Be Well by Kelly podcast, I'm talking with my sister, our Director of Finance and Operations, Krissy Zilli, all about the last year of rebranding Be Well by Kelly, launching our new site, and launching our vegan protein. You'll see a brand new site at bewellbykelly.com today. I'm so proud of this work. We had the opportunity to work with Foreigner, which is an amazing design and website company. Katie and TJ are salt of the earth, and we recommend them to everyone that we know looking to rebrand their company's products. Just beautiful work. We're so lucky to have the support of our manufacturing team, Doug and Carl. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for all of your love and support. Really, I can't stress enough. I could not have done the last year without my little sister, Krissy. Man, she used to work at Salesforce. I recruited her away, and it has been an absolute game changer from just financial visibility and spreadsheets to, she just jumped in head first and went for it. Like, if there was a problem, she'd figure it out, from the website and apps to add to Shopify to helping to manage, the people that help us on our customer service team, like to everything in between. Like, I cannot tell you. And her communication style, casual and kind, understanding, direct. She is so positive, and she's irreplaceable. I'm so lucky to have her on my team. I would clone her 1,000,000 times, and and I couldn't have done the last year without her. And so we're just gonna have a little conversation about what the last year looked like, leveling up these products, relaunching the site, relaunching our courses, Fab 4 Under 4, Fab 4 Pregnancy, Fab 4 Fundamentals, the Fab 4 Smoothie Basics, bringing sample packs to the site, and what the future is for our vegan protein line. So you can learn a lot in today's episode, and I'll do another episode with my little sister, Krissy, that's a little more personal, where I can interview her. I'd love for you guys to get to know her a little bit better. But for now, here's an update on all things BWBK, our new site, and our protein lines. Here we are, Krissy Zilli, my little sister, the director of operations and finance, sort of my boss now.
What is it you say you do here?
Oh my gosh. All I have to say is this job has become exponentially more fun. I decided to start a product company before my little sister joined me. Before I recruited her away from Salesforce, the large whale of a tech company in San Francisco, and tried to lure her to BWBK with the shiny fun of working with her sister. But running a product company is tough. Running not just like seeing clients and talking about health, but wanting to do something bigger. I needed to bring in the big guns. And so here you are.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been wild. I feel like some days I'm like, oh, this is so sick. This job she has, it's so cool. Like the network, the opportunities, like all that stuff. And then some days I'm like, oh, entrepreneurial life, there's a lot of risk. It's like, there's moments where you're like a little nervous. But it's been really fun. And I always say this to people who ask me if I like working for you. I'm like, of course I do. We're pretty similar. Our communication styles are very direct, very like pretty laid back. Hi, Cash.
Yeah, there's my nephew.
We have kids, so we get each other. Obviously, it's like working for a best friend, but it just feels like I feel very passionate about what I'm doing because it feels a little bit like my business, just because I'm so ingrained in it with you. I feel like, it's a part of me, and I feel excited. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I want to try that. And I've been able to explore like a ton of different departments. So I came in as a finance manager. I've been doing finance operations, which includes like inventory management, marketing. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you should put out this content. And I pretend I know what I'm doing with social media. Yeah. So I feel so honored because I get extra time with my son because I work part-time for you. I get to learn a ton of new stuff, and I get to work with you, which we call play work, because it's just like you're my sister and you are my boss, but it's like I don't, it doesn't feel that way at all.
No. And I have to say, Krissy's being so humble. Like I honestly couldn't do this without you. Like I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm selling a protein powder. I am taking money from my bank account. I'm buying this protein powder. I'm selling it online on a Shopify website I built in a weekend. And now I don't know how much inventory I have. I mean, like every Monday we have a little Zoom call. We talk about like what we did with our kids on the weekend, and then you go through spreadsheets. So you brought that professionalism directly from Salesforce into this business, and it's allowed me to make really strategic decisions. It's been really, I mean, it's just been really fun to do this job with you, and to always like kind of like refocus on like what's most important, which is providing a good, best in class product, not realizing that we're not doing, it's not rocket science, but we care. And then what's most important, which are, our families and our health and our mental health and our physical health. And yeah, it's been a totally wild ride, but I couldn't have done it without Krissy. And when she joined, I mean, I was over a year ago. Where was I at? Because let's like catch people up. I was in this already.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that, because I remember thinking my number one fear when I first started was I just came from Salesforce, a really big company where I've been doing something like managing budgets for SVPs and executives and heads of product and stuff like that. And I don't know what I'm doing in this like small business world. And so my number one fear was like, I want to provide value. That's my fear. I want to provide value. And so I'm glad I have. And we've had some really fun trips and like just interesting conversations. So I'm happy that we're there. But where were you? So this was June 2021 when I started. So it's been a year and a couple months. And I came on board. You're selling beef protein for a year.
Yeah.
And we have it on Shopify, which is our e-commerce platform, and we have it on Amazon. And you had your business on your Squarespace website, which was from 2012, which you built yourself.
I built both of those websites.
And yeah, so I think where you were at was I really need to like make this. You had met with a consultant, a really like a great person in space that helped you understand that just you're a big sophisticated company and you have products now and it feels a little clunky. It's a little hard to navigate. We need to have your first ever, we call it a rebrand, but it's kind of like your first ever kind of coming out, a new branding that you feel good about, that's actually in line with your values. And one of the things I remember is like, that makes you feel calm. Because that's what we all need. So I think you were exploring working with a branding guy who had done some work for Pepsi, and you showed me the early designs that he had created like 6 or 7 designs.
Yeah, no, I've worked with some amazing people. Like, shout out to Jessica Golden for helping me in the beginning to consult with the business, to talk about like what I needed to level up. I mean, she's totally right. The reality is though, I didn't go out as a female founder and raise money to start this business. Like, looking back, taking everybody back to the beginning, when my first book came out, I purchased $10,000 worth of pea protein. And that was when I was in an apartment with one car taking my entire, my entire book deal, like the first check you get and like basically taking it from my bank account, putting it in a publicist, paying up my PR, paying for my flights, paying for my hotels, paying for my outfits, paying for the food I needed to make in the hotel room to take on the morning shows. Like my book advance covered PR and the tour. And I don't think people realize that, so to take an extra 10 grand and buy pea protein and say, I'm going to manufacture pea protein because I talk about the Fab Four smoothie all the time and I want to have a protein, and most people have proteins, and I'm trying all these proteins and I know what tastes good. So I know I can create a good formula. And I bought that protein and it sat there for 3 months, and then it was 6 months. And, my manufacturer, Doug, I've known him for a really long time. I will say, like everyone I've worked with, I feel like really lucky to have worked with. I feel like they're good people and I get along really well with them. And it's always like a gut instinct of whether like this is right or this isn't right. And I pivot pretty quickly when it doesn't feel right. And I hold when it's like, I'm not sure, but like, it's either 100% or 110%, or it just doesn't happen for me, because it's really difficult for me to promote something that I'm not obsessed with or really proud of, or, I'll just naturally talk about things that I really like. And so the pea protein's out there, and it was now, was 3 months into my book tour, and some people know this, some people don't. Chris and I were talking about having kids. We had like basically put off having kids because we had these second careers, where Chris went back to be a writer and I went, left cancer and genetics to start Be Well by Kelly, and then I'd written my book, and I was like, well, we'll try to have kids after the book tour. And so we had taken a little vacation in the middle of the book tour. The protein had sat there for about 3 months. We like tried to get pregnant the first time. We actually did get pregnant. We ended up having a miscarriage that first time around. And I just had a minute where I was like, there is something keeping me from putting out this pea protein. And for me, it's like the understanding of knowing that plant-based proteins sequester a lot of heavy metals from the ground, meaning lead, arsenic, mercury, like whatever is in the soil is coming up into that plant. They're really good at that. And that is the majority of produce on the market. So it does not plants do not discriminate. It could be the squash that you purchase for your family that you cut up and roast in your oven, like that. That is sequestering a certain amount of heavy metals. Just beans and grains are just notorious, and large tubers notorious at being really good at that. Right. So that was one piece. And the second piece was a consumer report on like the amount of glyphosate sprayed on pea protein. And there was like this, this understanding that if I bought organic pea protein, which it was an organic pea protein, the protein sitting in Doug, my manufacturer's warehouse, he was just like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? I'm like, well, not there yet. And knowing that like, if it was organic, that wasn't going to be sprayed with glyphosate, right? That's just not allowed to happen. And actually, if there's any cross-contamination, it's always tested for that. And if it's grown organically and there's cross-contamination in the water and it comes back with a higher parts per million, they're actually not allowed to call it organic, even if it was grown organic. So like, there's some pretty strict rules there around that. The hard part is that when we looked at soil reports, organic pea protein was coming up with 2 times as many heavy metals as inorganic pea protein. So you're like, okay, I'm paying for a more expensive protein that's pea protein, but it's actually coming back with a higher amount of heavy metals. And so I just like, it didn't feel like 110 for me. And so it sat there. Like I paid for storage and it sat there for like, that was 2016, 17, a good, 3.5, 4 years. And I finally called Doug up and he was like, what are we doing with this protein? And I was like, I have been drinking collagen and I'm, pregnant, or I had BASH. I was thinking about having a second, and I was like, I know what I want to do. I want to do a grass-fed beef isolate. We were able to start that process. I felt so good about it. I drink it pregnant, I drink it breastfeeding. Like it's a chemical-free extraction. The animal is in a phenomenal filter. It does a great job of filtering for you. So when you think about using 100% grass-fed bones that have a little bit of flesh on them, it's the ligaments and tendons. They stew it down in hot water. And what that does is it's like bone broth, right? So we take these fleshy bones, stewed down, we dehydrate it, we skim the fat off the top, we dehydrate the water, and then we have this super glycine rich, or, super, we'll say in collagen amino acids, rich protein powder that's 100% chemical free extraction from a clean animal. And then it's like, it's food grade. It's not, hexane extracted. We're not using super high heats, or we don't have to deodorize. We don't have to like use any chemicals to treat it at all. I'm like, we can cook with
There's
it.
no allergens. It's like, yeah, I think with peas, some of my friends, they're like, oh, I just feel like bloated, and it's not grainy, it's smooth. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many like benefits, right? And again, it's like, if I'm going to come out with a protein powder, it's got to be best in class, but it also has to taste really good, because that was one of the things, like if I wanted to get a client on board with drinking a smoothie because either they had an egg allergy or they were unwilling to eat 3 to 4 eggs in the morning, which got them close to that 20 grams of protein that would keep them full and satisfied. Like, it was hard to do. And the Fat Force smoothie is like, it is a shortcut. It is a quick fix. It's just a tool. Like, I use it for a few months at a time. And then there may be, a few weeks where I'm like making eggs, or I'm having sausage, or, I'm having leftovers, like I'm mixing it up, but I go back to that tool time and time again, because it's just like, it makes me feel good all day long. So you have to like it to drink it. And also, I'm like, I have had clients who get headaches from stevia. I've had issues with, specific flavorings, or, vanilla being, an extract or a synthetic vanilla. Just like, I just wanted real food, and I wanted minimal ingredients.
Yeah.
And you've tried it. I mean, it's just like, I'm really proud of it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's really, really good, and really high nutrient density. And I feel full until lunch, 1 o'clock. I give it to my kid, and my husband drinks it all the time. And he just was on a strict paleo diet with a functional MD, and he asked the MD, because they were like, no, you can't have protein powder. And he was like, well, what about this one? And the guy was like, yeah, have it. And so that was like really refreshing, because he could tell it was super clean ingredients. Now we do have like some reviews, like it gets too sticky, like from the natural collagen in the blender, or some people, like you said, don't like the monk fruit, or it's too sweet, or we do have reviews like that, but overwhelmingly people seem to love it, and we love it, super proud of it. And so feel good about the beef. And then what people were asking for, people wanted vegan, or like, how did you, I mean, you started with pea and you're like explored it, but
yeah, I mean, I had explored pea basically because I do have this plant-based community that follows along, or people that don't eat red meat, or like, I mean, like I can think of one of my best friends from high school that's like, Kelly, I can't wait for you to come out with, and I have like stood on every podium or like soapbox and been like, the benefits of red meat, friends. Like, I feel like I have beat this drum, and there are going to be people that's just going to, you have to do you, and you have to drink. And if it makes them not feel great, or if they don't, then it doesn't align for them, then you got to do what's right for you. And so we did. I mean, like I did have a lot of people asking for vegan. I had people asking for vegan, in the weeks of launching beef, and that's hard because at the time I'm like, I don't have a source that I would feel comfortable. And the reality here is, I mean, this is a self-funded operation. I was in the backyard at my in-laws house where I live right now, where I've lived for all of Toshin's life, and he's 20 months old. Like I moved in the week before. And I was in the backyard here for something, and we were living, I was launching beef, but I was trying to get the funding for it. And I leveraged our down payment
personal
for our
funding.
house.
Yeah.
Like I called, Chris was in the backyard, and I called our financial planner and was like, yep, John, we're going to take a line out on that account. And he was like, okay, are you sure? And I was like,
this is not recommended.
I'm like, I'm sure. I believe,
Kelly and Chris.
well, you have to know that Chris was like, I don't want to know. Don't tell me anything. I don't want to know, because he's very risk averse. He's very risk averse.
Yeah,
and we're super yin and yang, which makes us like, I think, there are times when he's like, see, this wouldn't have happened if it was me because you're so risky. And like, I would have planned for that. He would have had like 3 backup plans.
Or insurance came in handy in a number of cases.
Yeah. He makes sure that I have insurance for everything. Right. Which is really important. But to have people asking for a vegan protein, like right when you launch beef, I'm like, I don't have the funding for it. The bags were created by Amber Moon, a phenomenal like artist and designer who did my wedding invitations, who's a friend who I've worked with, through multiple times in her life when she wanted to get healthy, before having her son Dash, before, her wedding. Like there were times when like if you look at the whole process, it's all been like, okay, personal funding, putting my own website up, working with my own designer, and then to have people ask for vegan and to not really have the funding for that, but then also to make the strategic decision that like the minute you bring in investors, they are looking at the bottom line, and they're looking at performance, and they're looking at growth, and they're looking at
and they're calling you at Bash's swim practice.
Asking like what's going on. And the reality is, if people were with me in the beginning, in the beef protein, we have 100% grass-fed beef isolate, right? Which is just that chemical-free extraction. Then we have either organic vanilla bean, which creates black flecks because it's actual black, it's the actual vanilla bean, or organic cacao, and then organic monk fruit, which is just dried and ground monk fruit. Super simple, super plain. In June, we launched the beef protein. In August, we're completely out of stock because vanilla bean is not available. And, my manufacturing guys are like, you had a great first sale. This is awesome. You're out of vanilla bean. We can replace it with the synthetic, vanilla, vanillin. And I'm like, I just know, like, I'm willing and have the flexibility and ability to totally not make any money and float that and be out of stock because these are where my standards are. And that hurt. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, it was a bummer. It was like, yay, this is so exciting. Oh, and there were times when we had major headaches with the beef protein on Amazon, when we were printing the manufacturing date and people thought that was the expiration date and they were putting in a bad review, or Amazon was suspending us for weeks or months at a time. Like all of those hits, if I had investors and I had a certain financial ability to like hire people to fix my problems really fast, that's awesome. But it also comes with bosses and people who are telling you what's most important. And what I'm telling, like, what is most important to me and to you, Krissy, now being part of the brand, is like quality above all else, and not necessarily like, do I have the prettiest branding? And I loved my branding when I put it out, but we learned along the hard way that like when vanilla and chocolate are the same, that Amazon might send chocolate instead of vanilla because they're not reading the white script perfectly. It's major little bumps along the road where you're not like going back and saying, what are all the fire drills that I had in this business? But let me tell you, in the last 2 years, there have been a lot that we've had to like work through and learn and figure out. But I mean, that's part of being an entrepreneur. And ultimately, like, the most important thing for me is to maintain the quality of the product, to always be really, really proud of it. And my test on that is like, will I drink it pregnant? Will I drink it breastfeeding? Will I feed it to my kids? Yeah. And if the answer is like a unanimous yes across the board, I'm like, here, like, give it to people, give it to my clients who have autoimmune diseases or, GI distress. I give it to, I just feel really proud of it. And I had to.
But everyone consult your doctor if you're in those situations.
There's a like more conservative. Yes, please. Doctor always.
But no, seriously, you had to feel super proud of it, and you had to be comfortable that was how it's going out to market.
Right. And like the reality is at the time when beef launched, I didn't have a source of vegan protein that I would feel that good about. And that's hard. Like soy is a no-go for me. Rice, arsenic levels, that's a no-go for me. Pea protein, like seeing the reports on heavy metals and glyphosate. And then also the understanding that lectins, also the understanding that, hey guys, pea protein is actually not a complete protein. Like it is a complete protein, but it has such low levels of methionine. If you actually look at brands that share the science, like a Ritual that has a pea protein, again, it's an organic pea protein. They're adding methionine to it. L-methionine is added to their blend. And that's like a complete they're known for transparency, and there's complete transparency there that like, hey guys, this is actually like not what
that's a brand you would recommend, right?
Yeah, I like Ritual.
If you like pea.
If you're going pea, you know, picking organic, I think is more important than than anything else because of pesticides and finding a brand that you can trust with minimal ingredients, like a Ritual, like a True Vani. I've had Vani Hari on the podcast before. There are people that I think are doing it right in that space. But then again, am I going to be like, if I'm coming out with a vegan, am I going to be a Me Too product? Right. And I can source that quickly. Like we could get off this podcast right now, call Doug, been producing protein powder for over 20 years, get a source of pea protein. We have our organic vanilla or organic cacao and our organic monk fruit. It's such a minimal formulation. Like someone could knock me off in a heartbeat. Right. But it is, and I don't suggest that, no. I'm just kidding. But I mean, being very realistic, like this is something that could happen. But it's like, I wanted something different. Like I wanted something that I thought was really interesting. And that's when, when I had a few vegan clients that I would recommend the lupini bean to. And if you guys ever heard of the lupini bean, I think the brand Brahmi, they make the snackable lupini beans. They kind of have like I don't know. Have you had them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bridget. That's so funny.
Yeah. They're kind of like, they do like, they're like marinated. They're meaty.
They're a little nutty, kind of neutral. I mean, definitely like reminds you, it's a legume. So it reminds you of like a chickpea or like a lentil, something in that vein.
Right. And what's so cool about the lupini bean though, complete protein as is on its own, right? You don't need to pair vegan proteins here to get a complete protein. It is a complete protein with a solid amino acid profile. So that's really nice for me. Like I have a vegan client who's pregnant right now, and she just went to Greece on vacation with her husband. And I'm like, please take these packs of lupini beans with you so that you can eat them or add them if needed, like a good source of protein, especially like thinking about the fact that she is pregnant. I was like, you don't need to bring protein bars. This is where it's at. And so that's what she brought. And so I'd known about the lupini bean for a while. And then, I saw chocho bean protein and was like, this is really interesting. Chocho is a variety of the lupini bean from South America. It's grown in Peru and Ecuador, and the varieties change, the color changes, the alkaloid levels change, which is like the bitterness in the bean. Kind of think about like bitterness in coffee and in cacao beans. Like there's a difference, right? An alkaloid level difference. And then go ahead.
Which is alkaloids, like a natural compound that the plant produces to protect itself from pests and things like that. And so like the process is to debitter that, to cook it and soak it. And and so then depending on the factors of the soaking and the cooking, the alkaloid levels fluctuate a little bit, right?
Exactly. And so like we look at like a traditional lupini bean, not a chocho bean from Australia or from wherever you're getting it, it's going to have a lower alkaloid level. It's going to taste sort of like sweet, like popcorn, like sweet corn, something like that. Like it's giving you that sweet flavor. But it also contains more carbohydrates naturally and a lot more fiber. And so the lupin, flour, if you were to do like a lupin flour pasta or a lupin flour bread, like sweeter, higher in carbohydrates, higher in fiber, but in a specific application, really great. As a protein powder, super sludge, right? And we did try that variety after Expo West this year, just because we were getting ready to launch the chocho, but then, had a source and a friend who was doing a lupin flour application in pasta. We were like, wait, if it has a lower alkaloid level, I need to make sure this is not not a better protein. It would probably give people GI distress as a drink because it made me super bloated, just too much fiber, in that and I'm used to a lot of fiber. So
I remember the first taste, you're like, oh, it's kind of sweet. Like, do I like this taste better? Yeah. And we talked about the protein difference too. There's slightly less protein in that varietal, the sweet lupini versus the chocho. Chocho has 50%.
Right. And that's interesting. That's an interesting point, because when you look at it, it's just like, it's actually like a pie chart. It's like what percentage is what. So as we look at the lupini bean, it's like more carbohydrates in the form of fiber. And you look at the chocho, it's going to be more protein and less carbohydrates, but you're getting a higher alkaloid level. And in South America, they use it all the time. Like if you've ever had ceviche down in Peru, it's like those white beans that are in the ceviche. It's, they use it as a staple down there, but it has to be processed right. So soaking it and cooking and then drying is the process. Again, a chemical-free extraction, which I love. A naturally grown bean. It's a bean in the way that soy brings carbon from the air into the ground and is regenerative in that way. If you know anything about
pulls nitrogen fixation.
Exactly.
So that makes it more, the soil's richer.
Right.
And then it uses less water.
Right. It's only grown from rainfall, traditionally grown crop. So all of these things that are coming up are like major benefits, right? I mean, it is different in regards to it's improving the profile of the soil, but it's not regenerative in the way that you look at like a Force of Nature or Rome Ranch, and you're looking at root systems and grass systems and grasslands. Like that is truly regenerative, and looking at the soil's temperature and really looking at preventing runoff and the soil microbiome. Like that is regenerative farming. Like let's not get it twisted. But in regards to improving the nutrient basis of the soil, there is a story here, and it is interesting in that it's not a pure pea, oat, soy, till large operation of just like barren dirt. And I do love I think it's really interesting when you look at the different countries, like Ecuador, for example, they're soaking the whole bean on average, most of the time to lower alkaloid levels. Whereas in Peru, it's like less of a white bean, more of a yellow bean. They're crushing it though. So there's more surface area, and they're soaking it longer, or soaking it crushed, which is going to lower the alkaloid levels probably faster. And it's just different ways of processing. So all this to say, like I've been for over a year since Krissy started in the process of finding a farm, finding a distributor, getting a chocho bean, sample, multiple samples, testing, trying, learning, getting to know what's out there and what's available, having some transparency and a direct relationship with someone down there to like get good quality protein. Ultimately ended up, needing to go through a distributor to get my hands on the chocho bean protein. It's not here. It's all over South America. It's in Australia. Mucuna is the brand here in the States that offers chocho bean protein and has they have their own formulation for it. And the founder of Mucuna, Ricky, phenomenal guy. SoCal, he was born in Ecuador, family farms, SoCal, roots here, lives in Santa Barbara, like friends of friends, like just heart of gold, like definitely like wanting to bring this to the States. The only one who's been able to successfully do it. And this is like pea protein 15 years ago. Someone decided to put pea protein out there. Maybe it was Orgain or Vega or whoever it was back in the day. And they were like at the very beginning, and they went through the trenches to do it. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do with chocho, is to get a high quality, complete protein without lectins, that we feel good about, that isn't a heavily watered crop, grows by rainfall, and is something that you can bake with, you can put in a smoothie that has fiber, a low carbohydrate content. And
yeah, you talked about, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No, go. I mean, I'm honest. I'm just like,
I was going to say, you talked about like your plant-based community, but when I think about chocho, I have uses for it too. And I eat red meat and have, get a lot of my protein from meat in general. So I think about it. Yeah, I think it bakes better.
yeah, it
I
does.
think if I need more fiber and I don't have it on hand to add, I'll just use the chocho instead.
Yeah.
But so there's uses, I mean, there's like a time and place for it, even if you aren't vegan. So I think, and then it's also super high in minerals, like and vitamins, vitamin E and zinc, and so magnesium. It's just like it's a cool, and it's a whole food. With the grass-fed beef, it's isolate, and this is literally just crunching up the bean and using. And so you'll see like some people say, oh, I don't know if I like the taste as much, as maybe not as smooth because but we like, you put it through like a super, super fine mesh to get it to the texture that you want, but it's not like, it's not solvent, right? It's not going to dissolve in your water necessarily. Right. So,
I mean, really good points to make, because that's like all part of the process of sourcing and deciding what we wanted. And what we finally decided was our approved sample of chocho bean was like the finest mesh we could get this chocho bean through, because ultimately when you have the grass-fed beef isolate, it's considered an isolate, even though it's not a chemical extraction, because of the process of removing the fat, which is naturally easy to do, because if you've ever cooled bone broth, that fat cap just turns into like a solid chunk of fat, easily removed and dehydrated. So we are isolating without chemicals, but with plants, you can't isolate without petroleum-based extraction processes like hexane or enzymes, right? And so there's some denatures, the denaturing of protein that happens whenever it's processed with anything, like even with heat and water, you're getting some, it's going to be denatured a little bit in comparison to say having like an actual steak. But I didn't want to denature plant-based proteins. I didn't want to use a solvent of any kind, like whether it was hexane petroleum based or enzymatic. I wanted what you said. I wanted a whole food product. And to think that this could be called a flour, I mean, it's that. It really, truly could be called a flour. It just naturally is. Lectin, lower in lectins, and then considered lectin free after processing, after the soaking process, which is so cool. And then just a flour. So it does. I mean, it makes better brownies. Like it's better in the walnut bread. We've recipe tested the heck out of it, but the ultimate sample for me had to be a specific profile of super low heavy metals. Again, naturally, any kind of plant is going to sequester something, but it had to be a better profile for me. I needed to know that the bitterness was as good as it can get, and that the mesh was super fine, so that I would, if the test was when I have my beef and my chocho, am I strongly drawn to only use beef, or am I actually interested in using the chocho? And like you said, you like cooking with it better. There were days actually where I liked the vanilla chocho just a little bit better and wanted a thicker smoothie and wanted it more of like a smoothie bowl, and was feeling like it was making me feel good, and I was feeling pretty full, and not to be TMI, but like great source of fiber. I was feeling pretty regular. Like I was like really enjoying it. And so we made the purchase, and we waited 6 months to get the product from South America. And it came on a boat to Houston, and then it was trucked into San Diego. And what happened?
Yeah. So from a timeline perspective, you tried the first sample in January. We were like, cool, let's go. Then we waited till April and put down a deposit, the biggest deposit I've seen you put down since I've been here on your cost of sales raw material. And then it came back in July. And at the end of July, 2 weeks before we were supposed to launch your website with vegan protein as an option, like have the packaging and everything, at the end of July this year, the quality results came back, and it was I believe it was mold and yeast that were
More.
found in, yeah. And it was just kind of, and it was a bummer. And then,
but I have to say, this is
yeah,
a parts per million that's totally sellable on the market. Like this is not, it wasn't above specs to be sold, but it wasn't to the spec that I approved, which is a minimal amount of what they would call platelets. They are not growing mold spores and yeast spores. These are naturally occurring in all plant-based foods. There's a certain number of dead organisms in everything that you would eat that is processed if it's cooked. Like if you were to cook beans for your family, if you were gonna cook plants from the ecology center here in San Juan, amazing, like
it's good for it, right? Isn't that bacteria kind of like,
I mean, no? I think you could, I mean, I'm not going to make a case for that. It's just a natural part of the process. It's almost, I mean, I don't want to use the comparison of like, when you like till fields, you kill bunnies, but like, it's unfortunate, but it's just part of it. And it actually doesn't deter me from drinking it, but I have higher standards. Like this is what we approved at spec. This is our original sample. This is, even though the yeast and mold test came back, it was about 10 times higher than the sample, still under what would be considered approved to sell, which does kind of make me, it does make me a little concerned which is why I've always kind of been a little concerned about like a bunch of processed powdered supplements and products, is like, show me your COAs. Like, I want to know your heavy metal testing. I want to know that you're clean when it comes to microbes, and like the percentage parts per million is what we're looking for. And so that was a bummer and a red flag. And I was like, this again, I'm a gut intuition, got to feel like 110% or it's not going to go. And like, super bummed not to be launching the chocho bean protein with the rebrand right now. Like, I'm really proud of the rebrand. Katie Forner and TJ, her husband, their team, they are just amazing to work with. We've had an amazing year rebuilding the website, bringing that Shopify and Squarespace site together, giving the vegan and the beef a whole new look, sample packs, like really exciting things coming in the future too, like a reusable container with a scoop, and really just like what she's been able to create, and she just like is representing the brand so well, and it feels calming and beautiful. And I want to launch chocho, but it just, getting that report was a no-go for me. And then tasting the samples, I think everyone wants to make it work, so our production guys were like, look, we're going to send you all these samples that we got. We're going to send you your old samples, which I still had on hand in my kitchen. Gotta love protein powder, 2-year shelf life, being able to compare that. They also sent me new samples from Peru, not an Ecuador sample, which makes it a little bit more yellow. I'm fine with a color difference because like, who cares about color, right? Mm-hmm. I want it to
feel, he said it was more bitter, overwhelmingly bitter. The look. So yeah, you're like, some of those I can deal with, like the color is fine. But obviously you want it to be as consistent as possible, and you definitely don't want it to taste.
I need some control too. Mm-hmm, yeah. I need some consistency, some stability with the brand. It's got to be, knowing that I have the grass-fed beef isolate on lock, and that relationship, like I'm able to source 6 months to a year at a time. And my manufacturer is like, I've been friends with Doug and working with Doug since I bought my first lot of pea protein that never went off the ground. Like I have the trust in that relationship, and that is like, I can buy it. It's solid. I know where I'm getting it. And being on the the cutting edge of chocho bean protein and what will soon be a huge space of pastas and crackers. I mean, mark my word, you're going to have chocho bean flour breads. There's going to be all kinds of stuff coming out with this bean particular because of the profile. The amino acid profile is just spot on, and it is sort of like looking back at the beef. It's like going out on vanilla. Like if I would have got a good lot, this first one, and sold it and been really proud of it and been really stoked, 5-star reviews. Yay. Everyone's happy that I'm providing for the plant-based. There may be there may be a chance that there's a manufacturing run that doesn't happen, because the reality is I don't have investors. I don't have people breathing down my throat to hit sales numbers. And I need and will always prioritize quality. And again, like my test for me personally is like, would I drink it a specific phase of my life? Would I share it with my entire family? Would I tell all my friends and family to drink it? It's got to be the case across the board, beef and plant-based. And so, I am super stoked about the opportunity to launch a chocho bean protein. I think this needs to come to market. I think it's a higher quality, I know it's a higher quality protein than what is available on the market today. And so, I'm working to get that done. And I have to give a shout out to Ricky at Makuna, because he has been, really kind and talking me through a lot of the processes. He's goes down to South America. It's his family farm, and he's grew up there and has these deep rooted connections. And that's the kind of transparency and visibility that I'm looking for from a distributor. And so, I am hopeful that I can work something out and be able to provide my formula, my flavor profile, my high standards and quality in a sustainable way with the right partner. And so I'm looking, I'm looking at the Peruvian source that we have now, but I'm not just going to put something on the market that I don't feel 110 about. And that's a bummer, but that's part of the process, And so this is kind of just letting people into what is BWBK, which is like, hey, I can make a baby faster than I can put out a vegan protein and relaunch a website and rebrand.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit of like, okay, where are we? How do we feel? Like what's going on? We're just going to keep searching, and we have a couple leads that we feel good about for the chocho protein, and that's like really the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Until we find a better protein out there.
Well, and the reality is like it is kind of interesting to think, is there a specific enzymatic process that I may be okay with to extract lupini isolate, for example. Like, I did like the flavor. I like that it's naturally lower in alkaloids. I like that it tastes like kind of like a sweet popcorn flavor. The unflavored would even be amazing in a protein powder, but it's like the consistency fiber sludge that you want a little bit of fiber, but you don't want like a clog my pipes type of situation. Or the opposite for some people. Like, it's just the whole thing needs to be good. Like, the whole experience needs to be good. And that's just the reality of being an entrepreneur in a small business. Yeah. And
so we're going to try to get that refund. So we can reinvest in the business, which is the MO.
Yeah. We're working on that refund. And
then we could just like talk a lot about supply chain issues.
We're working on not being up at 1 a.m, hyperventilating in a bathtub by myself. Especially with 2 young toddlers.
Oh my God, we just talked about that. Like, just our meeting before this, I was like, I just want to have the right balance where I'm not like stressing you out, but we're also like motivated to make sure cash flow is in the right spot.
Honestly, it's like Krissy is a blessing and a curse. She is like, let me give you all the insights into your financial business. And I was like, I don't want to know this.
Yeah.
I just throw stuff against the wall. And no, I mean, it's really good to make strategic business decisions when you have a spreadsheet and a financial, like, you understand your cash basis and you understand where the business is going and what I'm going to have to pay for taxes and where, what hits I take doing a sale or giving away protein to an event, or, it's like kind of crazy to think about all of those costs and what that looks like to actually grow. Because it's great when you like sell 100 units and then you have a margin, so you make profit, but then all of a sudden demand's going up. So you got to reinvest that and buy 200 units and it's a benefit. But when you're looking to launch another line or you're looking to rebrand, and you have to invest in that rebrand, and then you have to invest in, buying all the protein bags. It's not like I'm buying 3,000 bags and making 3,000 bags of protein. You're buying 40,000 bags and you're like, what?
Which will last year. Yeah.
Well, it will last a long time, which is great because you want that quantity discount, but it does mean that things get tight, and it does mean that there's like some stress financially. And I'm willing, like I told Krissy earlier today, like I'm willing to take that risk. I'm cool with risk. I am an adrenaline junkie, but every now and then there's
that's Kelly's defined level of risk. Like, but it's true. It's just like not compromising. And so,
and that's why you have people like Rachel Cruz on your podcast. And she's like, don't have any debt and do all these things to get yourself out of debt. That one. And I'm like, man, take me back to the days of my Brentwood apartment when we had one car, no mortgage. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love my babies and I love the future.
And there's a plan. Yeah, there's a plan. It's not like we're just racking up debt. I mean, there's like a level that we're willing to take on in order to grow over the next 5 years. And there's a lot of like trust and faith in what you're doing. Which is, for me, bringing it back to the beginning of the conversation, is kind of like that part where your like heart starts to go in entrepreneurship, where you're like, oh my gosh, is this excitement, or is this like, am I gonna just have an anxiety attack? Yeah.
We're hiring.
Just it's fun to work with you. And I don't think you need to be sisters. It helps because like just the trust and everything. But if you find someone you like really love and trust to work with, I think that's the fun part, because you get to like share in those moments, and you get to, make trips out of work.
Nothing's been more fun for me than literally having a Monday morning Zoom with you and like talking about the business, getting to go to New York together. Like those were trips. If I'm leaving my kids, now once you have kids, it's hard to leave your babies. And so to leave my babies to go on a work trip to New York, it's fun for those first 24 to 48 hours. And if it's longer than that, you're like, I need to get home to my people. Like my family needs me. I need to like this feels like too long. And anytime that I travel with you, it's excitement the entire time. And we're like, we get a lot done on those trips, and we think big, and we have plans, like I have plans for growth for my brand and product extensions. But if it isn't like I can put one out every quarter, I don't have, I didn't go raise $5 million for this brand. And I don't have the ability to do that. It really is based on organic growth and community growth. And I don't know, I look at Mark Sisson and I look at his brand Primal Kitchen and what he did on his own. He self-funded that thing. I mean, he took a second on his mortgage and went into some credit card debt, and he did take a risk, and he failed taking those risks before Primal Kitchen, before he had a big win. And they had some major headaches along the way, but being able to have complete ownership over the brand, and just to be able to decide, like, if something isn't working, if I launched a product I wasn't happy with, and it wasn't resonating with me anymore, or new science came out and I didn't love it, or I didn't feel comfortable with it,
Yeah.
I could pull the ripcord and no one's going to say, but what about that line item? But what about that revenue? And I would just say, oh, what about, does it align with me or not? And that's what I want to continue to, have control over. And maybe it's making me sound a little bit like a control freak, but I'd rather
You're
have
not
that.
controlling at all. I feel like this is different. This is like control over the vision, control over what matters.
Yeah.
You let me just do whatever I want to do. Like the anti-micromanager. But yeah, I think I know what you mean, where you're like afraid to give up the reins, even though people come in, the consultants come in and say, you could be here, like you could be a millionaire and all this, like promising all this stuff. And that's happened to you multiple times. And so it's sort of like you'll engage in the conversation, but it's just a matter of like making sure that I mean, you are the brand, and so making sure that that's consistent.
Yeah.
Speaking of brand, time check. We have a meeting with our branding team, Katie Forner.
Oh, yeah. All right. She's keeping me. I told you she was my boss. We got to wrap this up. Yeah, we got to go talk to Katie and TJ, and we got to launch this thing. We got to do some QA checks in the next couple of days. It's crazy. We're taping this right now, and it's going to be secretly launched for a few days, and then we'll tell you about it. You guys can come check it out.
Yay.
We're also going to do some cool things in the next couple of weeks. We are going to have an epic sale this weekend. Super stoked on that. A launch sale. You can get the new branding sent to your house. We are going to do some cool stuff with the sample packs. We're going to give you the chance to just pay an extra $10 to get Fab4 Smoothie Basics for free, which is so awesome. Because I really want this to be education based. We're working with them to figure out how to make all of my free downloadable PDFs something you can just add to your cart, so they just come to your inbox. I mean, really just trying to provide value wherever possible, so that you can take care of yourself and your family, support your blood sugar balance, feel your best, and know that like I've got your back. We've got your back. Because gosh, I could never, ever in a million years be where I'm at right now, or have gotten through the last year without my sister. Whew. I would have either had you, or I'd have to find a therapist ASAP. You're the best. I love you so much.
The best job I ever had. So
never leave me. Never leaving. Okay, good. All right, guys, that's a wrap. We gotta go launch this thing. Here we go.
Love you, Cal.
Love you too, baby. Bye.